Today I am going to cover how to build these flip carts, a fun project no matter what skill level you think that you are. Don't undersell yourself, people. Costing less than $80 per cart, this project offers space-saving solutions for the benchtop tools that aren't in use as often as others. As long as I own the plans, they will always be free. The link is in the description. This cart is outfitted with caster wheels, so it can be paraded around the shop or just simply rolled out of the way when not in use. I wanted to use the largest width, height, and length possible while still keeping them somewhat small and maneuverable. So this is what I came up with. Let's begin. You guys thought I was headed straight for the miter saw, but no sir, no ma'am. The first step is actually to measure the tools that you want on your flip carts while also factoring in the amount of space you want your flip carts to take up in your shop. This will help you decide your cart's overall dimensions. If you only plan to build one cart, you should honestly just go ahead and build two because the tools are coming. I can promise you that. And for those that are creating more than one cart, the tools that you use the most should not be on the same carts. So here I have the drill press and bandsaw, and then I have the sander and planer. So I will use my drill press and sander a lot more than I'm going to use the bottom sets of tools. However, they are still easily accessible. And with how they are mounted, you don't actually need one tool per cart. So this one's going to have the drill press. It's a monster. It takes up the whole top. But the back for where my bandsaw is at, I have all kinds of room so I can mount the Pocket Hole Jig 720 Pro Plus. I haven't opened it up yet. And behind my belt sander, I can mount an oscillating sander. All right, now we can cut some stuff. I started out by cutting my sheet of plywood down to create the tops. I do this by using 4 sawhorses. You can see my 2 sacrificial ones in the back, missing the red tops and are shredded to literal bits from passing my circular saw over them so many times. Using 4 sawhorses help to support your material when making cuts. You can also use a sheet of insulation foam underneath to cut your pieces if you have nice sawhorses or if you wish to cut this on the ground. Using the factory edge from a previous board, I ripped the sheet down so I had 4 23-inch squares. The numbers make sense, but I still think they're wrong, but we're gonna run with it. Remove that pesky rough end of the dimensional wood and cut a few 2x4s for the base. You will need 8 pieces for each cart, and they are all different lengths, so keep them organized. Now it's time to begin marking the bottom bracing to cut the joints. Remember, the sides mirror each other, so each joint will be cut on both ends of the board, and 2 boards will be the same. Oh, easy there, thumbs. Unplug your saw and dial in the depth. For my miter saw, it is the top knob right here, and right here is the plug, so we are safe. I used a scrap 2x3 so that my board was not up against the fence. Now that your blade is not traveling all the way through the board, it will not cut a clean line unless you bring the board you wish to cut farther away from the fence. I am only going to demonstrate one half-lap joint since the process is the same for each. Begin your cut just off of your finish line and creep closer until you are satisfied, then making multiple, maybe even thousands of cuts to remove the rest of the board. At first, I used a chisel and a hand plane to remove the excess material, but it is much easier just to slow it down a little bit and finish the work on the miter saw. Here are a few pieces beginning to look like the bracing. I added a block to the top of my 2x3 to better steady the board, and so I wouldn't have to hold it down so tightly because it's a lot of strain on my thumb and wrist to make a pass, then nudge it 1/8 of an inch and make another pass, also having a death grip on it just so it doesn't move. Using a piece of that plywood, I cut down some pieces so I could make some quick storage for under the carts. I cut the pieces to 23.5 inches, then ripped them down to be 2 inches wide. This way I could use 2 Kreg screws in each for better support. I think these will be simply for looks since there isn't much room under the carts depending on what's being flipped around. Measure out your pieces so that they have the same spacing. Mine are 1 3/8 inches apart. Then I use another block to ensure that the board is up against the bottom for my bracing, before screwing them in place. Be careful using an impact gun for Kreg screws when working with plywood, as it has a tendency to split out, weakening the connection. This is why I go through at the end and snug them up by hand. All right, the first one that I had put together, the wife walked in, and I know she would hate that if it ended up on YouTube. And the second one that I just did, I did not have my camera in the right setting, so it did not record me doing this at all. So that was cool. Hey, so this is what I did to put this bad boy together. So to hold these together, I just put 3 screws into each of the sides. And then for the boards that mounted to here to get these 2 sides together, I had just countersunk a screw so that way it holds it into place. And once we actually put the casters and stuff onto there, it'll hold it in place as well. So there is only 2 screws holding this in. It's going to get a bunch of glue and sink in, so this will be a stronger joint when it's done. Questions? Pop it in the comments. Just get this baby put together to be like this. I'll try to do better. Moving on to the legs. Yep, those look a bit lengthy. This step is important to pay attention to because it will tell you which direction your slats in the bottom are going to go. So with these 2 boards, there is going to be the 2x6 sandwiched in the top for the flipping cart. So if I mounted them this direction, slats would be going this way. If I mounted it this direction, it'd be going this way. So I want my slats to be perpendicular to my flipping cart when I'm standing in front of it. So I'm going to want my board configuration like this. And then remember, this is going to get cut down, but also raised onto casters. So my height is actually a little too much for this. I'm going to probably cut them down maybe about 3 inches so that they are going to be the same height as my workbench. All right, trim those down and finish cutting the other legs. I say it once more for those who skipped ahead. My legs ended up being 31.5 inches in length. However, several factors are involved when figuring out that dimension. And for some reason, I never get that word spelled correctly. Factor number 1. What are the heights of the tools you wish to put on this flip cart? As they have to have enough clearance to not only flip underneath, but also so you can use them on the cart. You'll see a little later on in the video my hiccup with not factoring in that the bandsaw table is 12 inches above the base. And second, the cart should be at a comfortable height for you. I am 5'8"ish, and these carts are a similar height to what my workbench is. The joints on the top are the half lap joints we cut earlier, and they are all the same exact cut. I bought these caster wheels at Harbor Freight. 2 are pivoting with locks and the other 2 are fixed. Since these carts can be a little heavy and awkward, 4 pivoting wheels might be harder to position, and who wants the extra strain on their back? Not me. The 2x6 top bracing is cut to 29 1/4, then everything is placed onto the only cart that has wheels and wheeled off to the side, unfortunately for a few months. 'Cause in the arms of Flip roll away from here. Forest wood, and it cuts like butter on a bandsaw. Cuts again, more sanding. I have come to terms with the flip carts never being completed. All of the tools are just for each pass. I bumped the flush cut router down about 1/8 inch to 1/4 of an inch. What'd be cool is if I had some freaking flip carts that had these tools already on them. If only I had a freaking flip cart. This isn't going to make much sense to you guys, how excited I am that we're going to continue to work on the flip carts finally. As all the other videos, I've just been using them on the ground right here because I don't like moving them all the time. And since this had begun 5 months ago, I have made it through planter box season. Congratulations to everyone who has done that. We've built a pergola in our backyard. We put up a privacy fence in our backyard. I built a shed for a guy. I finished the bike cabinet front so it doesn't look poopy anymore. That's great. So yes, very excited to finally get this guy out. I did only cut 4 of these boards, and I need 4 per cart. I have 2 carts, so I did buy another board so I can finish that. Yeah, and let's get back into it. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to actually show you guys how to build the legs for this, because I did skip that when I built this, just so I had a little experience before telling you how to do it. So here we go. So the first thing we have to do is cut these little lap joints into the tops. I'd have cut a few of them. I just got to finish them. If you're going to build 2 carts, you might as well, while the saw's set up, cut all of them. Not really sure why I didn't do that, but I didn't. So if you're making 2 carts, cut all these at the same time. Otherwise, I just got to reset the saw up, finish out the rest of these top joints, and then we can show you guys how to cut the bottoms. Quite a lot of sawdust has accumulated since I'd last used my miter saw clamp. Oh, there it is. Cut the half lap joint for each piece while it is still unassembled. Ah, beautiful. So to join these 2 boards together, you are going to make sure that this little half lap is lined up, that they are equal all the way down. If you have a little bit of a lip on this side, you might have a little bit of a lip on this. That's okay. We'll trim those off in a minute. So just make sure that this actual half lap is good to go. I measured in 10 inches and centered them. Actually, I just picked up a Klein tool combination square, which is cool because this is actually magnetic. So it's a lot easier to get out and use. It's real easy to click back in there. It's easy to set where you're putting your 1 3/4 so you can draw your line. It stays there. I like it a lot more than this guy, which has the little twisty thing that comes loose a lot. It's aggravating. So I am just going to recess these little screws. I'm going to use an exterior screw. I got a whole bunch left over. They're pretty strong. Please don't use drywall screws. And then I'm just going to recess it just so the head goes beneath, so it's not putting extra pressure. It doesn't want to split out later on. Secure the 2 boards together. I only use 2 screws. Then trim the top so that the 2 pieces are flush. All right, there are our 4 with the 2 lap joint connected in, so that is done. Now, if you do have a lip on the bottom, it is okay. If you want to trim it off, you certainly can. However, in the bottom with the joint, you're not going to see it. I don't go all the way down. But I will put them to here and then trace around the entire piece, just so I have a basis as to how far deep to go. You can also use a combination square, but this works almost just as good. And this will also ensure that they are exactly the same height if you're making 2. Okay, since cutting out this excess material around the outside is a bit confusing to me, all I do is I just line my board up with the side, make sure that my half laps are in line, since I wanted my boards to go this direction as they are on that. That's why he's back there, so I can see him. Looking good. So I just draw my line where I'm going to be cutting this material away. Draw my line where I'm going to cut this material away. Move your board to the opposite side. Draw your lines, because once I put it down and I cut this, you won't be able to see this line because it'll be on the back side. So I like them on just both sides. And I know to cut and remove that material. Then I come back afterwards, draw the other 2, and cut those as well. For these cuts, you will also need a board against the back, because your saw blade will not cut the very back if it's up against your fence. So I just flip this guy around, and that's what I got. So let's try this again. Beautiful. I make a cut down by where my mark is at, just to make sure that I have the correct depth, and then cut away. Look at how perfect that little joint is. So then we are going to repeat it with the other side. So just lining her up, drawing your lines. Not a bad idea just to put X's on the stuff you're going to be removing, just so you know. All right, and the finished product, looking good. I didn't use a chisel, I didn't use any sanding. That is just literally the rough cut from how this went. It fits in there like a glove. A little bit of glue to hold it in place. I will smack it down with a mallet once we get the rest of these cut. So we're just going to repeat the process for these other 4. To finish this guy up, I'm going to put some wood glue onto the joint, push it down into the base. There is a screw that I'm going to just sink in. That's just going to hold the upright kind of more structurally in place while the glue sets up. Then I'm going to add the wheels, and it will be caught up to our first cart. That's why it's tight. Well, I cut this one wrong. I don't know how I didn't catch it when it was sitting inside the hole. This guy's right. All the other guys are correct. So because this side was not flush, I had to remove some of the material from this side here, which inevitably creates a little gap, which I am going to fill with just a piece of scrap. So if one is cut incorrectly, everybody else looks to be correct. That one is messed up. So just to fill in the gap, I'm going to put that, and then the screw is just going to get countersink in anyway. All right, let's finish the glue up. Show you one more time on a side that's not going to keep you scratching your head because I've made like 16 errors. I am snipping this video into 3 parts. Part 1, you guys watched, it's for the bottoms. Part 2 is going to be the flippy top part and bracing. And part 3 is going to be just some add-ons. I'm building a sandpaper organizer and a thing so that the cords are organized on here. Just some extra add-ons to make these even cooler than they are right now. I know, hard to believe. So I hope that your guys' flip carts are going along smoothly, and I'll see you in part 2.